the first thing, let's establish here what creativity is not. It's not this mysterious spark of, this superpower that will hit you someday. So I think all of us should get that out of our heads. It's not arts and aesthetics. So being creative does not mean how well can you draw or how well can you paint. That's something or how talented you are. Like, talented is the word I've seen people use a lot, where they say that, okay, I don't have any talent, I don't have any skills, I'm not creative.
Hi, Apeksha. How are you doing?
Very well. What about you?
I'm doing good. Welcome to Detox, the design podcast. Thank you for accepting the invitation and making time for this episode. A super important episode for the listeners. And I am so excited to be here because there are many things that I want to ask you today. I've been following you and your content for the past, I think it's been almost 7-8 months since I came across your Instagram account. And I had this in mind somewhere that I have to, have a conversation with Apeksha. And here we are today.
I'm so glad that we're doing this finally, because I've been actually I've been trying to find avenues to reach out to more and more students. Mm-hmm. And yes, I think this is going to be great.
Yeah. Well, I think something that you just mentioned right now, that you're planning to, or you're looking to reach out to more and more students.
Right.
So we'll come to that a bit later.
Yeah.
But the thing is that I've kind of listened to a few episodes. I think you were also speaking somewhere. I listened to a few episodes and I did my part of the research, and I got to know that you have done 10 years of working in the industry, almost a decade of experience working in companies, and and then you go on to start a design firm of your own.
Right.
And now you've transitioned into somebody who mentors the young creatives.
Right.
So I want to know about this journey. I want to know how you became a designer, one, and then second, how you took that decision to leave the job and then move forward from it. So let's start with your journey. How was it?
Okay, so I got into design with absolutely no plans of becoming a designer. So I actually had no plans. I did not know about design. I did not know design existed back then. And because I come from a very conservative business family where, business is like either setting up your manufacturing unit or selling something. It's not really about design, right? Like, design cannot be a career option. So yeah, like when somebody, I think it was one of my uncles who introduced me to design, and then I got into the college, started getting a hang of it, still had no ambition. I think in the first year, we were just, experimenting with lots of colors and doing like lots of hands-on work. But again, like design as a career was still not there in my head. And then, yes, things got a little more serious in the second year of my college, where I remember we were given like laptops, and we were taught Illustrator and Photoshop, and we got like an actual insight into the world of design, like what graphic design or visual communication could be, and the kind of impact you can have with your work on the world. So from there, I think my foundation became really, really solid, because for me, it became a lot more about that how I have the power, what I do on screen sort of changes things. And that was like a very early realization that I had very early on in my career, because few months, I think in the second year, I started getting work from my professors itself. And I started doing live projects. And since then, I think I haven't stopped. So that's how I would describe. And then, then it was just about just producing more and more work every day. So I did about 6 or 7 internships. I worked with a lot of companies, became a design consultant. At the age of 23, I was leading a team of 5 designers.
Wow.
And at the age of 24, I got offers from companies like Google and Uber India as the senior designer, which obviously I didn't take, because I had this early. So I think when I was 22 or 23, I had this vision of setting up my own business,
Wow.
coming from the business family. So I wanted to set up my own design firm and an organization which does great work, great people, great team. That's what I envisioned. And I realized working with Google or Uber would put me in a very strict, rigid structure of creating things in a certain way, and wouldn't probably, I would get comfortable while I'm there. So I didn't want to take that up. And it took me about 6 months to come to that decision. A lot of back and forth between Google India's team and just my head. So a lot of
Right.
back and forth where I just finally decided that okay, it doesn't fit at the moment, and I'm just going to set up my own company. So I quit my job. I decided that I don't want to do a 9 to 5 anymore. And I started working independently as a freelancer. When I was working as a freelancer, initial few months were really tough because I was getting a hang of it. But having said that, I think I was very fortunate because my work got a lot of attention on some online platforms like Behance and Dribble and Pinterest and those kind of things. And yeah, from there I started getting more and more work. Then the work got so much that I had to hire people. People were assisting me with it, and then I had to hire full-time resources. And then before I knew it, it was already a business that I was running. And then the challenge was that okay, now I have these people and I have the work coming in, and I haven't done any marketing to get more business. How do I maintain my payroll? So words like budgeting, having a
Oh
strategy,
yeah.
business strategy to sort of make
Yeah.
sure everything is running smoothly, finances, taxation, all of those things became really overwhelming. That's when I started studying more about business and creative entrepreneurship, and how do you sort of give a structure to this whole this whole thing of being a freelancer, and then turning that into a business. So yeah, a lot of I'm like a self-taught entrepreneur, I could say. And that's how the journey began. So within like 3 to 4 years, and just constant improvement, a lot of failures, a lot of trial and error, we were able to work with some of the leading organizations in the country. We were a team of only, I think, 4 or 5 people at that time, and we were handling about 15 projects a month.
Oh wow.
And we were delivering, like producing work like crazy. And
Same.
yeah, it's been like really exciting. Now when I think about it, I'm getting very excited thinking about it. So yeah, it's
Wow.
been a great journey. And then I remember everything was going great. Things were our business was at peak. We were churning, like we were making like good amount of money to sustain all of us.
Mhm.
And then the pandemic hit. When the
Oh yeah.
pandemic hit, because most of our work was in hospitality and lifestyle,
Hmm.
that took a hit and the projects started falling through. But the whole idea was just to keep going. And that's when I started getting more and more projects for product design or digital user interface and user experience, which
Mhm.
wasn't my forte. But then I had to keep the boat sailing and I had to keep the company running. So I took
Mhm.
those projects up and I started studying UI UX on the side, and I started hiring UI and UX designers.
Mhm.
And then I started picking up more and more product work. And that went well for about a year. And then that's when I started feeling this itch of, actually then what had happened was, I would just like to rewind that
Mhm.
while I was getting into product, I was also looking for more avenues to sort of broaden my horizon, because we were just sitting in our homes and I wasn't getting the exposure that I needed. So I thought of going for a master's degree, but because of the pandemic, then I couldn't do it. So then I got into the rare Google fellowship. And I was probably the only Indian who got selected that year for the APAC batch. And that really changed the game for me. That was like a huge turning point in my life, where they asked me some really hard questions,
Mhm.
which made me think that, okay, I'm doing this work right now. It makes me happy, but is it enough? Is it fulfilling enough for me to wake up every morning? Because I was one really, really ambitious person, and I was turning into somebody who started hating Mondays. And
Mhm.
rare Google Fellowship happened at exactly that time. So that really changed a lot of things for me. It made me meet people who became great influences in my life, who probably helped me understand, what the meaning of purpose or inner voice and those kind of things is. How do you
Mhm.
start to recognize those? What I really wanted, what was I doing, where was the gap, all of those things. And when I started working towards it, I felt like since last 10 years I was trying to be a part of the race, of this competition of being a design
Mhm.
studio, making more
Right.
money, getting the right team, getting the best of projects. And then suddenly I didn't want to do it anymore. I didn't want to be a part of the race. I wanted to have my own legacy of, my own impact that I could create on people. And from there I decided to just take a sabbatical. It was probably one of
Mhm.
the hardest decision I had to go through, because I knew I wouldn't be making money anymore. And I
Mm.
was so used to making money since like second year of college, right?
Yeah.
So that was a really, really big decision that I took. And I think I don't regret it at all. So, and from there, this whole journey of mentoring started.
Wow, that's incredible. And you've actually mentioned different things. I'm gonna pause here and take you back. I mean, the journey is so rich that I want to take you back to your internships. Okay.
Sure.
So you mentioned 6 or 7 internships. That's a
Right.
lot.
Right.
That's a lot. Now, I remember having a conversation with one of the design students. I don't even remember where they were from. I think it was on LinkedIn. Uh,
Right.
and they were asking if they should do a second internship or not because they've done one internship. And also, I had put up a post on LinkedIn for an
Mhm.
internship.
Okay.
This was long back when I first started off my own studio, and we were working on these things
Uh-huh.
on different projects, and we wanted an intern, and I put it up on LinkedIn, and I mentioned the intern must have some experience. Now that post, you could say that it was ridiculed a lot
Right.
because now they don't expect the interns to have experience,
Correct.
right? Now here I was expecting the intern to have some experience, right? Because I think somewhere down the line in the Indian design education system,
Mm-hmm.
the concept of doing multiple internships is not there. It
Mm-hmm.
is not there.
Mm-hmm.
Being closely associated with design students, and at
Correct.
for the past few years, I've seen
Yeah.
that at most people will have only 2 internships. That is also when
Right.
after their first year and then after their second year of
Right.
masters, or after their third year of bachelor's or fourth year of bachelor's. That is when they
Yeah.
go for
Correct.
internships.
Correct.
And then after that they want to just crack the इतने लाख का पैकेज लग गया है, अब मुझे जो नौकरी करनी है,
Right.
मुझे इस कंपनी में करना है. So 6 or 7 internships is a lot. So how did you do those things? I mean, what made you take up so many internships?
I think the first 4 semesters, because I would pick up an internship almost every semester 3 onwards.
Hmm.
So we had about 2 semesters in a year, so 6 semesters in 3 years. I'm talking from the second year of college.
Right.
Second year of college, I had 6 semesters, which means about 6 internships. Our college professors, especially the professors who were mentoring me, they pushed me for an internship for the first 2 semesters. And I was pushed to do an internship with a not for profit organization, which I absolutely hated initially. I did
Okay.
not want to do it. I was crying. I went crying to my
Okay.
parents and I was like, I don't want to work with a not for profit organization because I
Hmm.
wouldn't learn anything about design. That was my biggest apprehension.
Hmm.
But when I did it, even though it was just an 8-week internship with one, and the other one was, I think, 6 weeks,
Hmm.
I did those internships, and this was during the breaks that you get right after the jury. You get those two
Yeah.
or 3 month ka break. That's when I took these internships up. And the first one was so both of them were with not for profit organizations, and I was just hustling hard to make my way through, and just picking up so many pieces because everybody had so many opinions about design. And here I was, a 19-year-old kid, trying to
Yeah.
get all the feedback, put it into action, all that. And
Right.
then I think from there, I don't know what I learned about design, but what I
Mm,
learned was this, this mindset and this habit of figuring things out on your own, being a troubleshooter where you just, do some hustle, go online, learn something on your own, and then just crack it. Like the whole
right.
idea is to just crack it. The
Right.
second internship was actually a wall art project that we did for a not for profit, and it went on like we were painting walls for like I think 4 or 5 weeks straight in like really hot summer.
Hmm.
So that was the second experience, which I think taught me a lot about hands-on work, because hands-on is something that people are usually afraid of and don't really consider it as real work. But
Yeah.
I think that taught me a lot about hard work and hands-on work, and it absolutely made me fall in love with it. And I think since then I've never stopped painting walls, so or like painting in general, because I got so fond of it, because it was just such a not only a stress buster, but was such a good experience to have do something with your hands.
Mm,
That, and then I think the third and the fourth and the fifth internship was just to figure out if I want to do design or if I want to get into advertising, because I couldn't make that decision. And the only way, the easiest way to make that decision was to by doing it. And that's what I was taught. Because and I think by the fourth or the fifth semester, I was also getting a hang of doing internships. So I liked it. I liked working with different organizations, meeting those people, picking up whatever I could from them. So yeah, and then the third, fourth, fifth, and I think the sixth internship happened just to figure out if I want to do typography, if I want to do design, if I want to do advertising, should I work with a big team or a small team, those kind of things, just to make those decisions. And yeah, and I think like a lot of learning happened there. And then when I think what worked for me when I started looking for a job is that I gave about 14 interviews,
okay.
and I said no to all of them. So that was the beauty of it, because I had so much work by the end of
Right.
college that everybody was in awe that how could I produce so much
Yeah.
work in college, which was
Yeah.
mostly life projects. And I interviewed with some of the best agencies, and I still remember like but yeah, there was this agency I wanted to work with. They rejected me about 4 or 5 times, and I would keep improvising on my portfolio. And every year I'd apply there.
Hmm.
So I never got an internship with them, but the best part was that I cracked a job interview with them and I got the job.
Wow.
I actually ended up working with them because I was just constantly improvising on my portfolio.
Hmm.
So that's how I think internships helped me. They were like the stepping stone for my journey, I guess.
That's insane, and I hope that the students who are listening to this, I mean, I cannot tell you how helpful this is for students, and how I've struggled to explain this to students, that internships are so crucial.
Yeah.
And you've touched upon all the important points about an internship.
Right.
And I'm glad that you brought this up, and I'm glad we discussed it today. And moving forward, so now that you have started working in the industry for close to a decade,
Right.
and then you had that rare fellowship with
Correct.
Google,
Right.
and that's where you actually figured out your inner calling and
Right.
your the inner voice, and you started to follow it.
Right.
Now, I want to understand how you took that decision, that okay, this is something that I'm organically driven towards.
Right.
Something in me is telling me that okay, that I need to do this. That is the way to go. So, how did you realize that voice, and how did you choose to follow it?
Right. I think again, what really works for me is just by doing it and trying it.
Mm,
So, and that has been my way of doing things since I was a kid. So, as I told you, I got into product, which I
mm,
thoroughly enjoyed, and I still do. Like till date, I really enjoy it, but I still felt a very big piece of my puzzle was missing,
Hmm.
and I was looking for it. So I would do all the things that I love doing, because I'm also a person who likes doing many things in one go.
Hmm.
So for me to bring my focus back to one thing was really, really hard, which is why it's taken me about 1.5 years or slightly more than that to figure out what I want to do. So I started by learning 3D, because I thought 3D could be the thing. So I learned Blender and all those things. And in like about 2 weeks, I realized, okay, this is not something I want to do. I don't like waking up with this feeling of, I started having those dreams where my renders are like my files are crashing. So I didn't like that feeling. So I said, I don't want to do it. Then
Okay.
I tried typography, tactile typography, where I would use different materials to create typography. And when I thought of it as a career option, it didn't feel like it. It didn't feel like it could pay the bills, right?
Yeah.
Not at the stage where I was at, because there
Yeah.
were many people who were doing really good work when it came to tactile typography, and I was still starting. So that would mean I would spend about 10 more years just refining my typography skills. And that's
Yeah.
when I can probably have that as a career option, which didn't work for me. So I scrapped that off. Then I started fiddling around with clay. I learned ceramics, I learned pottery, I learned plasticine, handling those materials, getting a whole thing out of it. I tried use what do you call it? Building animation out of it.
Oh,
So
wow.
I tried those cell animation. What do you call those?
Yeah. Yeah.
Top motion animation out of
Stop
clay.
motion animation. Yeah.
Yeah, so I started doing that. And again, the skill was a problem, that I was starting out and there were so many people who were doing it better than me. Then why would, somebody hire me to do that? So
Hmm.
that was again a red flag. So I said, okay, no, I can't do clay as a career option. Then I thought of picking up a job. So I said that, okay, let me just pick up a leadership job, like a creative director or a creative lead somewhere. And maybe because I like working in teams, that could be the solution. So I spoke to a couple of people, I got a couple of offers, and I said no to them again, because I said, okay, I've got the offer now and I don't like the feeling still. So
Hmm.
I said no, that, okay, this is not something what I want to do. And then I realized that during the Google fellowship, I had made a notebook in which I had written all my thoughts and my entire journey of just being a leader, being a creative leader, what makes you more creative, those kind of things. And then I reflected upon my past notes and conversations that I have with my team members. What are the things when I'm mentoring somebody? What are the things we
Hmm.
talk about? I started getting this as a feedback from people that I'm very good at mentoring people. And when I have these conversations with them, it helps them move forward. It helps them take an action. It helps them
Hmm.
unblock their block and those kind of things.
Hmm.
And that's when I started thinking that I looked at my bookshelf and all the books that I had were around productivity, were around being more creative, were around cracking design, making human centric design, a lot to do with how people behave, what are their fears, how do you overcome those fears. Everything was around that.
Hmm.
That's when it rang a bell in my head that, okay, what are the challenges that I faced and I did not have a mentor? I faced these really, yes, there were these hard skills that I was talking about. Ki mujhe Illustrator nahi aata, I don't know Photoshop, I need to get better at, I need to learn 3D, those kind of things. And then there was this whole thing happening in the hindsight, which was about, I had a lot of self doubt. I was this only designer in my family, and my family did not think of it as a career option. So, how do
Right.
I power through every single time? There were a lot of personal setbacks I faced during that period. How do you sort of overcome that anxiety and just focus on your work? How do you ship your
Right.
work every day without fail? How do you be consistent? Those kind of
Hmm.
things are what I struggled with, and I did not have anybody to go to for those kind of things. And
Right.
that's when it hit a chord, and I said that, oh my god, there are so many people who are probably facing the same challenges which we're not addressing. We don't talk about it. And why do we
Yeah.
don't talk about it?
Yeah.
Why do we not talk about when somebody gets stuck in the loop of perfectionism, or when
Hmm.
somebody is procrastinating a lot? Why don't we question those kind of things? Why does the conversation end right there? And that's when I started writing about it. when I was writing about it, I wanted to just put it out in the world without again having an agenda of creating content or getting into mentorship full time or producing my own books. Anything wasn't a part of the plan. I just put out some content, but I started talking about my journey, the struggles that I faced, and I saw this sea of people who started relating to the content
Yeah.
where I was just writing my own thoughts. And that's when I realized, okay, now I feel my work is making sense. It's
Hmm.
making the impact that I have been looking for.
Hmm.
I don't anymore wake up with the feeling of, oh God, Monday. I'm looking forward to
Yeah.
Mondays. I'm regaining that, that whole enthusiasm that got me to do the 6 internships in the first place, right? I'm
Right.
I'm I'm bringing all of those feelings back, and that's when I started understanding that this could be something.
Hmm.
And I am still going through a lot of iterations in the way that how can I turn into something more approachable, more outcome oriented, those kind of things. But I know that this is the path I'm going to follow right
Hmm.
now, for now, and I don't know for how long. I'm hoping that I can do this for as long as I can, where I can keep making this impact that I have on people, where I've seen results, where I've seen people getting unstuck. And I think that's something that kind of fuels me every day to do this.
That's amazing. I think that's when I also came across your content on Instagram when you were posting about
Oh, yeah,
different kinds of things that
right.
creative people faced, and why I could relate to it because I never had a mentor. I never ever had a mentor and never had any designer that I can talk to about these things that happen in my mind. I would just talk about suggestions ki हाँ क्या करना है अभी, how to prepare for things and how I
Right.
can go about the interview of an ID. ऐसा वो ठीक है, like those are things are fine. Those things are fine, but then what happens inside the mind? There was nobody to discuss all of these things with,
Correct. Correct.
and that's when I saw, oh, okay, here is one person who is posting about, is talking about those things, and
Right.
it's very rare to come across that kind of content. So that's when I was hooked onto it, and it led us to here. I think we're having a conversation now because of that. So incredible job done there. And now that you mentioned that you were in the beginning also, that you mentioned that you were now trying to reach out to more students,
Correct.
uh, right? So now you're helping young creatives to you know uh, orient themselves or reorient themselves in the right way,
Right.
giving
Right.
them a few tips or guidance or
Mhm.
sort of
Mhm.
mentorship.
Mhm.
So I want to know what exactly in detail that you talk about. uh, I know that you have had workshops
Correct.
about creativity, right? ABCs of creativity, if I
Right.
remember it correctly.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So, can you tell us a little bit about what that workshop was about?
Okay, so that workshop was about making people familiar with the whole concept of creativity, that how we see creativity as arts and aesthetics
Hmm.
and some mysterious, magical, superpower that kind of hits you one day.
Hmm.
But that's not true.
Hmm.
So it was to break that stigma. It was to break that stigma and making people realize that if we cultivate the right kind of habits and skills, we can be creative. So it's a way of it's just like any other habit you would cultivate, right? So
Hmm.
it's a way of looking at things, it's a way of seeing things differently. It's when you can solve a problem, say like an old cliche problem, in a new way and make it simpler for people to access. So it was more to do with that how you sort of overcome your inner fears and
Hmm.
unlock that side of you that has that courage and is curious enough to be
Hmm.
creative. So
Interesting.
yeah, so the whole workshop, it was a 3 hour intense live learning experience that we did, and it was for and it's for really small group of people because it's so intense and interactive. And there's a lot of thought provoking questions that come your way. There are lots of really hard discussions, like really difficult discussions that happen during the workshop. And yeah, I think post the workshop, I've seen some phenomenal results because people have actually realized some of the fears that they've been probably going through for a very, very long time. And now it's time to act upon it. And some people just had the realization of that how their inner mental chatter stops them from being creative or reaching their full creative potential. So that was all that the workshop was about.
That's interesting. Now that brings me to the question, how does one know that he or she is creative or not? Because I'm asking you this because many students come to me. Now I'm mentoring students who are going for design entrance exams.
Right.
Now they come to me saying that, sir, Sanjay, like मेरे से ना होता ही नहीं है ये, मेरे को लगता नहीं कि मैं creative हूँ, है ना?
Right.
And this is not only students, this is also parents saying that हमारी बच्ची कर लेगी क्या? मतलब इसमें तो बहुत क्रिएटिव होना चाहिए ना, मतलब ये इसमें तो लगता नहीं है हमें इतनी क्रिएटिव है। या तो उनको लगता है कि हाँ, दैट द चाइल्ड इज क्रिएटिव, बट कितना क्रिएटिव होना चाहिए एग्जाम के लिए, यू नो?
Right.
So how does one know that if he or she is creative or not?
Right. Okay. So I think the first thing to know that the first thing, let's establish here what creativity is not. It's not this mysterious spark of, this superpower that will hit you someday. So I think all of us should get that out of our heads. It's not arts and aesthetics. So being creative does not mean how well can you draw or how well can you paint. That's something that, or how talented you are. Like talented is the word I've seen people use a lot, where they say that, okay, I don't have any talent, I don't have any skills, I'm not creative. But is that true? Is that true? Because since when I was a kid, I would literally take all the TV remotes of my house and fix them, literally, like fix them every single time, open it up, take out the batteries, take out that board and everything, and just fix it. So I call that being creative, where I was a solution oriented person. I was just trying to find solutions. How can we fix this thing, what the problem that we have in front of our eyes, in a more effective, in a more efficient way, is what creative is to me. So I don't think it's about when people say that I don't think I'm creative. We first need to understand that what is creativity for them, on what basis are they saying that they are not creative. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. It makes perfect sense. So let's say somebody is just listening to this episode and has no other person to talk to.
Right.
Okay. How does one self-evaluate?
Okay. I think to self-evaluate, there are lots of factors that come into play. And some of them being that when you think of your ideas, the first thing is, do you have the courage to implement those ideas? Can you implement those ideas without, despite of all your fears? How well can you take in action? How many times do you take in action to actually implement the idea is what you should think about. When you see a problem, what's your first reaction? Like, are you coming from a solution oriented mindset that, okay, let me figure out a way to solve this problem, or does that problem overwhelm you? Those kind of things. Or for example, are you curious enough to see that I have this problem in front of my eyes, what are the possibilities? Again, something to do with, a lot to do with courage and curiosity. So do you get taken over by fears, or are you able to power through your fears and finding the solution? Like, your focus should be, like I'm saying it again and again, finding that solution, moving forward, taking an action. Those should be your focus areas, and that's how you sort of evaluate if you're being creative or not. Not in the way that this person is doing better than me, this person is my benchmark, so am I reaching to that level? That's not the right way of evaluating yourself if you're being creative or not.
Right. That's a very, very good point there. So guys, listen to this and please follow this. It'll make your life very easy. I also struggled with it a lot. And
Right.
I'd be very honest in saying this here for everybody, that I struggled with it for a couple of years.
Right.
I definitely was comparing myself, and I was in that loop, comparing myself. Oh no, this is shitty. I should go and do a lot more. And then I'd struggle, I'd work hard. Then I reach a certain level where I know that I've actually improved from what I was before. But then I'd look at somebody else who is higher
Right.
than before. And then I'd feel again, I'd come back to the bottom of that space. And then I'd have to again climb up. I followed it again and again. It was a vicious loop. And then I realized that, okay, I have to break free from this. And
I think,
now,
sorry, I would just like to add something in our
yeah.
previous conversations that we had, and you spoke of your journey and
Hmm.
how it was also a roller coaster of,
Yeah.
like lots of ups and downs. And just the fact that you were able to break through the barriers every time and find a solution around it without thinking if you're being creative or not. Because if you had gotten stuck into that loop, it's just like a downward spiral from there. So
Yeah.
for you to understand and be aware of that, okay, there is a way out. How do you sort of, being resilient in those times and adapting yourself to the next upcoming thing? And I think that's what makes you creative, where you're just constantly being resilient and adapting to the change and finding solutions for whatever problem it is that's in front of you.
Absolutely. I cannot agree more on this. And now bringing it back to our students, that
Yeah.
my audience mostly is design students or design aspirants.
Mhm.
Uh, Now, going through these questions or question papers or situations that NID or all the other design colleges that they put them in, uh, there is a constant day in and day out when these guys are
Mhm.
preparing for these entrance exams. There's a
Mhm.
constant pressure of a lot of things. First, because they don't have a clearly defined syllabus for this. So
Okay.
the NID only says that we're going to test your knowledge, we're going to test your skills, we're going to test your behavioral abilities. Now, behavioral abilities is a lot of things, right?
Right. Right.
Lot of things.
Right.
So, in this case, when you're constantly thinking about and designing solutions and preparing for these exams,
Mhm.
there's a lot of pressure,
Mhm.
and even to be creative
Mhm.
every day,
Mhm.
thinking of creative solutions every day,
Mhm.
it is exhausting and it is draining.
Correct.
So how do you deal with that?
Right. Okay. Just collecting my thoughts here.
Mhm.
Okay. So I think the first thing we need to probably switch in our heads is that it's not about being creative every day. So if we take that pressure off for a second and just focus on what needs to be done, let's just assume I'm under pressure and preparing for an exam under pressure. It's not helping me to think that, oh God, how do I be so creative? I'm just trying too hard to be creative. That's not helping.
Right.
So instead of doing that, if I start focusing on, okay, here's my step one, this is what I need to do. Once I finish this, I will move to the step two and then step three, and so on and so forth. I
Hmm.
think having that awareness is very important, that what is your task list? What are your goals? And if you break those goals down to the simplest of the granular level, right, and then you kind of strive for that goal, you run after that goal, then it makes a lot more sense, and it makes that pressure a little less daunting, a little less overwhelming, because then it doesn't look like, oh my God, I have to prepare for the exam.
Hmm.
It's more about achieving that one tiny goal that's in front of you, and
Right.
once you do that, you'll move on to the next.
This is amazing, and as simple as it sounds, it's not easy to
No,
do
of
it.
course, it comes with it absolutely is not simple to do. It comes with a lot of practice. There are
Hmm.
going to be
Hmm.
days where you win, and there are going to be days when you're terribly losing and crying. So
Yeah.
that happens. But I think if we just reduce things to their
Hmm.
basic level and not complicate it in our heads, because I feel as creatives, odds are always stacked up against you,
Hmm.
where there is a lot of external pressure that's coming your way simply because people don't understand what you're doing. And then there is a lot of internal pressure where there's a lot of self doubt, there's a lot of comparison, there's a lot of fear of, like, so
Yeah.
many things bundled up. So in those times, I think either this is like a choice you make. You get caught up in the fear, or you get the work done. You focus on what you need to do and you get that done. So of course there are like ways of coping with those fears, which is like a longer and another conversation altogether.
Right.
But I think the most approachable and the most easy, or like the most difficult way to do this, is that you focus on your goals, not on your fears. You focus on your goals. And if goals as a word sounds very overwhelming to you, then just do the next right thing. That's how I tell myself every time I'm under pressure, that okay, let's just, simplify things and think about the next right thing that I need to do. That's it. And that really helps me calm down.
Yeah, that of course requires a lot of practice, as you mentioned.
Yeah.
And uh, I'd like to uh, point out the something that you just said, and I'd like to ask you based on that, that we need to focus on what is at hand, like the next right thing to do.
Right.
So now, creative minds, they find it difficult to do just one thing,
Right.
and I struggle with it too. Like, I cannot just work on one project. I
Right.
can never do that.
Right.
Even if I don't have a project, even if I have just one big project in the studio that we're working on, I would definitely start some passion project or some random illustration on the side,
Right.
just to keep myself occupied. Like, so for the students, is multitasking good or bad for creativity?
I think that's a very tricky question there, because I feel multitasking works really well for some people. It works really well for me. Like you said, I don't know if it's so much about occupying myself, but like I said, I have been one person who likes doing many things in one go.
Yeah.
I think for me, what works really well is the time I delegate to these tasks. So I know for a fact that I can't spend forever on that self-initiated project, because I have to, at the end of the day, pay my bills as well,
Yeah.
and get the project out and deliver the outcome. That's what I need to focus on as well. So I think time delegation becomes a very, very important part of it. That if you like doing many things, you have to be very extremely mindful about what's taking up a lot of your time. Is it, high impact tasks that probably sort of give you that money and that's, help you sustain yourself? Is it those, what's again, like what's high impact for you? Defining that. Is it just creating art all day and it doesn't matter what people think? Then that should occupy the major chunk of your day, and then rest can be the side tasks. Or if you think like the sustaining yourself is more important and doing client work and commission projects is more important, that becomes a large part of your day, while like your self-initiated projects are just like a tiny part of your day to sort of keep you going. So it really depends on what your priorities are in life, in what's your vision for your life, and then picking up tasks accordingly. So multitasking can be very good in that, from that lens. But I have also come across people who find it really hard to switch between tasks. To, when you're working on, like I said, like we used to deliver about 15 projects a month, it used to be a challenge. So I was looking for people who could multitask like that, where you could switch your brain off from one task and then move to another task. So detaching yourself from that outcome becomes very important while multitasking, that you stop caring for that project for some time and move on to the next. That's what works for me, I guess. And yeah, I think I'm a multitasker, so I would vote for that.
Yeah, of course. I mean, majority of the people actually face this, and from what I have experienced so far and what I've heard from students so far, is this: like, they have that trouble switching the mindsets.
Yeah.
It's a very difficult thing, and it has to actually again happen with a
Yeah,
lot of
I think
practice.
like your idea should be delegating maximum amount of time to the work that really matters to you. So
Yeah.
figuring that out becomes very important, and then dedicating the rest of your day to doing other things.
Yes, absolutely. I totally agree to that. And now that we are talking about the switching mindsets, and we talked about self-evaluation
Right.
and many important things that uh, I personally feel that these things were not uh, there when I was preparing for
Mm-hmm.
design entrance exams.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm personally an advocate of saying that it always happens here. Like
Mm-hmm.
you perform if you're good here,
Correct. Correct.
even in the design entrance exams, even whatever the question is, whatever the thing is, it all happens here.
Right.
And like all the students whom I've taught, I've time and again I've said this to them. And
Mm-hmm.
some take the advice, and some practice it so that they can perform well in the exam. Some come back to me and say that, Sanjay, you told me, but I didn't do it.
Right.
It messed up my exam.
Right.
So they realize.
Right.
So this is very important things. I'm so happy that we have actually discussed all of these things today. And now I want to talk about what you are doing right now, the
Mm-hmm.
mentoring students and young creatives. So
Right.
what exactly are you doing now, and what are the things, can students enroll for a workshop, or can they
Right.
come to you for a mentorship program?
Yes, of course. So I've just listed myself on ADP list so that people I have, again, like I said, like more access to more and more people. So
Mhm.
people can find me on ADP list for to book a mentoring session. I am currently focusing on helping young creatives, or just creatives are working alone, let's just put it like that, because those are the creatives, like those are the people who do not have a solid support system or an ecosystem that's backing them up. So
Right.
I like to work with solo creatives who are facing creative barriers, roadblocks, creative blocks, so to say. And I help them overcome those and probably help them build an action plan to take an action, where we talk a lot about unlocking some mindset. We talk a lot about building systems and processes for them, which can actually, at the end of the day, help them do the work.
Mhm.
Because that's where, like, that's the school of thought I come from, that no matter what, you have to keep shipping, you have to keep delivering, you have to keep taking an action.
Yeah.
So, and I think not all of us are fortunate enough to have that external voice or a mentor who can always make us come back on track, or unlock our whatever,
Right.
unblock the barriers that we're facing. So if I think with the right kind of guidance, with the right kind of skill sets and the mindset, we are capable on our own to do that for ourselves. And that's what I'm aiming for, to enabling as many individuals as I can to take an action without any help. Of course, like there'll be help, but on their own.
Right. Of course. And guys, you can find Apeksha on Instagram. It's the right brained human.
Yeah,
Right.
it's the right brain human, and my ebook is coming up soon, which is about getting shit done, which is about this phase of getting stuck into motion and not taking an action. Why
Mhm.
do we not take an action, and what are the things that would come handy? So the book is full of some insights, resources, my processes, my ways of finding my way through. I've spent a lot of time just reflecting upon and introspecting upon the kind of things that help me power through those times. And it's not just this wisdom that I'm throwing in the book. It's
Yeah.
a lot to do with some really powerful tools, very simple techniques, very simple processes that you can apply in your daily lives to get shit done.
That's amazing. And where can people find the ebooks?
It's on my website right now, so you can access it through my Instagram and join the waitlist. The ebook will be out in, I think, sometime in mid-June, and that's when I will launch it.
Okay.
But till then, people can join the waitlist and access some bonus tools and free resources that I'll be coming up with very soon.
That sounds amazing. And before we uh, close this episode, I want to talk about. Uh, let's say I want to ask you the last question, which
Mhm.
is, let's say, if we have to sum it up,
Mm-hmm.
the episode,
Yeah.
and if I want to take, let's say, three things from here, what would they be?
Okay, I think three things would be that do a lot of work.
Hmm.
Do work as much as you can, produce a lot of work to understand what is it that really matters to you, what is it that you really like doing.
Hmm.
The second would be finding your tribe, your people, your support system, staying connected. I understand the journey. I understand how when you're creative, there is a sense of loneliness that kind of crawls in. But how do you combat that? So finding that either it's through by joining a community, talking to your friends, going for events, whatever it is. I think that exposure is really, really important. Building that network and those connections is really, really important. So I think the second point would be finding your tribe. And the third one would be to be very self aware, cultivate this habit of being very self aware, of understanding and questioning actually that if you are procrastinating, then why are you procrastinating? If you are being a perfectionist, why are you being a perfectionist? If you fear, if you have a fear of failing, or if you have a fear of judgment, whatever your fears may be, why are those fears there in the first place? So figuring out your why, I think, becomes very important, and questioning those fears and questioning your choices, it just helps you grow in a way that I think it just helps you being more open minded, where you accept feedback, where you're less critical of yourself, where you get the courage of doing things that you actually want to do in life.
That's amazing. Thank you so much for joining today. And personally, I've uh, learned a couple of new things here today. And I'm definitely going to put them into practice. The concept of, self-evaluation, you know,
Correct.
that still haunts me. Still, it's there every day, day in and day out. It's there because uh, first, the journey that I've taken is full of, self-doubt and a lot of things that happen,
Right.
that we need validation, we seek, so we are loaded with all of those things, and
Mhm, mhm.
burdened, let's say, not loaded, but yeah,
Yeah.
burdened with all of
Yeah.
those things. So I'm definitely going to put that into practice, or let's say it was a reminder for me. And thank you for sharing all of this information, and I'm sure this will be super helpful for all the young creatives that are going to listen to this. Thanks again,
I'm
Apeksha.
glad. I'm so happy to be doing this right now. Thank you so much for having me here.
It's a pleasure.